Good.
All right. Well, welcome everyone. We certainly appreciate you coming. This is the Property Pro series. That's a new. I mean, it's a series we've been talking about, but we didn't have a name on it before. And so Steve Rupp, he came up with this fantastic name. Today we're talking about the secrets, tips, and strategies to win more listings. Steve, can you just give a real quick overview of what we're going to talk about today?
Sure thing, Rick. So thank you for partnering as always. Love doing these, and we sure hope that you take some nuggets out of this. So our goal is to arm you and equip you with strategies that you can implement today that will improve your listing conversions as well as help you with listing appointments. These are a lot of things that a lot of your experts and pros don't want you to know because sometimes you're in competition for listing appointments with them. So I'm going to teach you some of the strategies that I've learned over the past 25 years that allowed me to convert over 90% of the listing appointments that I went on. And that is right, is over 90% is what my numbers as I track. But we're going to talk about listing presentation. We're going to talk about the importance and what is part of a pre-call questionnaire, why you need that as part of it. We're going to talk a little bit about the NAR settlement, and I'll insert my disclaimers here. First of all, we are not lawyers. Nothing that we are talking about today is to be construed or used as legal advice. Always consult your broker and your legal counsel if necessary before implementing anything. And the last thing, as always, in the spirit of everything that's been happening lately, commissions always have been and always will be negotiable. There is no and never has been any set commission, and we will not be discussing any particular commission fees, structures, anything like that, because we know that is all negotiable between the client and the agent. So with that out of the way, those are some things we're going to be talking about. And then lastly, at the end, just know that everything that we talk about today, I'm going to be sending you, if you entered your email address when you registered, which you should have, and that's the way you got onto this, I will be sending you everything I talk about. So I'm going to be giving you my listing presentation that I use. I will be giving you my pre-call questionnaire that I use. I'll be giving you my marketing checklist that I use, and I'll be giving you my listing checklist that I use. So these are everything that I use on a daily basis and have used with my team. You are free to use it as you wish, or you can take bits and pieces as you like and improve it and use it in your own business.
Yeah, that's really generous, Steve. I think that people will find that extremely helpful. And you've done this for so long, you've done so well that it's really nice to have somebody who really knows exactly what to do, talk about how to do it.
Absolutely. And I'm, as most of you know, I transitioned over to coaching earlier this year. I've been in business for 25 years. It is my passion to share information with my colleagues, and I think it's really, really important to be educated. If for those of you who were part of the Hamco division meeting last week, you saw me on the panel as we discussed something that is very near and dear to my heart, and that's professionalism and why it matters, and in some of the hot points of that. So if you were there, thank you for being there. And if you weren't there, I'd be happy to have a conversation with you offline to talk about that. So with that being said, Rick, are we good to move into the content today?
We sure are. And I already put up the first slide.
Awesome. So if you have questions throughout this, please put them in the chat. And I will try, Rick and I will both try to answer those as best we can. And then the other thing I'm going to mention to you is after this is over the next several days, week, I will be reaching out to everyone who has participated on this just to get your feedback on this. We want this to be relevant to you. We do this because we want to improve professionalism, but we also want to make sure it's relevant to what the needs that you're seeing in the market today. So I'll be following up with you just to have a real quick conversation of what'd you like, where could we improve, and what are some ideas for some future topics that we could deliver to you in the months to come as we do this on a regular basis to make sure that you see this relevant. And make sure you bring a friend. Invite a friend to these. This is open to anybody, and we'd love to have as many people as possible.
And Steve, I should add one other thing, just in case, if you, last time we had a little trouble with everybody being able to see it right off the bat and see the presentation. So if anybody's having any trouble, or if you can just let us know it's working, that would be great. We'd appreciate it.
Awesome. Yeah, great. Well, let's go ahead and move right into this. So an hour's going to go by real fast, and want to make sure that we have enough time for some Q&A if anything resonates with you, and if you'd like to dig a little bit deeper for the benefit of everyone who's on this webinar. So first of all, we know that there has been a lot of changes in our industry, and I would suggest that it is going to be a paradigm shift. And that is not language that I use lightly. We are seeing a paradigm shift. In other words, there is going to be changes to our industry that is going to change the way that we buy and sell real estate, or help others do that. And so as a result, obviously the settlements, the lawsuits, all that stuff, they continue. And we don't have 100% clarity yet. Things keep changing and evolving. There are more lawsuits that have come out. So as we talk today, I'm sure there'll be changes that happen in a month or 2 months or next year or whatever down the road. But as we know it today, we know that if you're watching this from Indiana, as of July the 1st, we have a law now that states that you do have to have a written agreement in place as a buyer's agent in order for you to even show a property to a buyer. Now, let me be very clear about this, because this is very misunderstood and misconstrued by a lot of people. And as I talk to agents, the number one concern and issue that I am hearing consistently right now is lack of understanding and clarity, and there's a lot of confusion out there. Specifically, do I need to have a buyer's agency agreement signed before I show one house? Well, the answer to that is yes and no. Yes, you have to have something in writing. No, it does not have to be an exclusive buyer's agency agreement that you can find under zip forms for the forms catalog that most agents utilize for IAR. You do need to have something in writing before you show that house, stipulating, among other things, compensation, if any, that you're charging, and the term of the agreement. And then after that, you can do whatever you want. But that's important. And so I just want to be very clear, it doesn't have to be an exclusive buyer's agency agreement. That does not have to be the form. That form was never referenced by name in the law or in the settlement that NAR and the plaintiffs agreed to. So again, this is not legal advice. I'm not a lawyer. I'm just telling you what I'm interpreting and what I'm seeing in this from language. And if you don't believe me, go back and look. You can see it's very clear in there. It must be a written agreement. So you do not need an exclusive buyer's agency agreement to show a house, but you need an agreement. The only exception to this is, as a listing agent, you can show potential buyers your listing as you are representing the seller. Okay, so I want to be very clear about that, and hopefully that provides some clarity. So we know already that the BAC, the Buyer's Agents Commission, has been removed from those fields on the listings. And I'm not going to go into what my thought is on all this, in my opinion, all that, because frankly, it doesn't matter at this point. It is what it is. So whether you agree with it or not, these are the new laws, and these are the new rules by which we have to play. So here's the deal. And this is what I've been hearing from listing agents as I've been asking them, are you getting a lot of buyer's agents calling you before they show properties to find out if A, if you're offering any buyer's agents compensation, and B, if you are, how much? And frankly, that shocks me. I'm really surprised why agents are not asking that, because I think that's important. You need to know relative to how much you agreed to have you and your buyer agreed for compensation for the services that you're providing. By the way, everyone should be compensated for their time. We're all professionals. No one should be doing this free of charge. But you should be asking or getting or finding out how much the seller is offering of compensation, so then you can inform your buyer that, to see if there's a discrepancy between what the seller is offering, if anything, and what you're charging your buyers for your services. So if you're not doing that, I would encourage you to do that. Now, it kind of stinks because it used to be pretty clear up front, you knew, and that was the purpose of the listing system anyway, was a unilateral offer of compensation as well as a listing aggregator. It was never meant to be a marketing platform. It's turned out to be that, but that was, now we've removed one of the main reasons why the MLS was started to begin with decades ago. But what that means is it just creates a little bit more work for us as agents in order to make sure that we're being compensated. So please do that. Make sure you understand the rules. Make sure you explain those to your buyers agents. Make sure that they understand that they are being represented by you and you alone in single agency. And then, of course, you can have the conversation if it were to apply for limited agency, if you were selling your own listing, that kind of thing. I have heard from a lot of listing agents that they are getting an uptick significantly in some cases in buyer calls, in buyers wanting them to show their properties. So if you have not had that yet, you will, and I would encourage you to have some plan in place on how you're going to handle those calls and the conversations that you will have with those buyers as the listing agent. My suggestion would be to make sure that they understand that if you're showing it as a courtesy as part of your job for acting in the listing agent capacity, that you explain that very clearly to the buyers and that they know that you are not representing them, that you're doing this under the representation of the seller, so on and so forth. So that's really, really, really important to understand. And as a listing agent, you should make sure that you are clear with that and know how you're going to address those situations when they come up. The other exception, of course, is open houses. And buyers can come through open houses. They don't need any agency or anything like that. Obviously, the listing agents are doing it as a function of their marketing for their sellers. So those are some of the rules. The main thing is we want to make sure that we are transparent about everything. We want to make sure that we are explaining to our sellers that commissions are always negotiable. That they always have been negotiable, they always will be negotiable, and that if you choose to offer a buyer's agent's fee or commission, that is also completely up to the seller. Now, this is something that we're going to be talking about a little bit later in the presentation, so I won't spoil it now, but I'm going to be sharing with you a script to have that conversation when you're asked by sellers, do I need to offer a buyer's agency compensation? Because if you haven't had it, you will. And for those of you who have had that conversation, do you have a script that you can follow to illustrate the benefits of offering a buyer's agent's compensation to buyers on listings? So I'll share that script with you here shortly. Rick, is there anything you wanted to add on this?
Actually, I just had a question because it's one of those things I don't work in it every day. I'm on the finance side. So if I'm a listing agent and a buyer calls me or a buyer comes into my open house, you don't, obviously you're not, it doesn't sound like you'd have them sign a buyer's agency agreement, or could they if they didn't have an agent? How does an agent deal with that?
That's a great question, and each agent will handle it differently, or again, talk to your broker if there is a policy that your broker would like for the office to implement. That's really important. I'm not your broker, so I can't give you those policies, but what I can tell you is that if you have a buyer call you to see your house, it would be my opinion that you're doing it under the auspices of your marketing and listing agreement with the seller. And so if they want to come through and see it, let them come through and see it. This would be a great opportunity for you to talk about the benefits of working with their own buyer's agent, and maybe you could convert them into a buyer and have them approve a buyer's agency agreement with you at that point. Same thing with open houses. Be a great opportunity to point out some pain points for not utilizing a buyer's agent, and to hopefully help them self-discover the benefits of utilizing a buyer's agent, with obviously then showing them the benefits of approving a buyer's agency agreement and entering into a formal fiduciary relationship in that capacity. So Rick, I see that the answer to your question is I see it as an opportunity. If in my opinion, I wouldn't require a buyer to sign that in order to get in to see the house. Get them in to see the house. That's the whole point. You want traffic for the open house. You want traffic for your listing. Get them in. After that, that creates an opportunity for you to have a conversation. You should have a script around this where maybe you could convert some of these people. You won't convert all of them, but you can convert some of them into buyers.
Yeah.
Listings should bring buyers.
It could be good for business, but you got to be prepared, right?
Correct. Absolutely.
Always got to be prepared. Are you ready for the next slide?
Yep, let's go. Okay. So our pre-call questionnaire. So this slide, if you were with us last month as we talked about the buyer agency consultation, your initial consultation, you saw the importance of utilizing a pre-call questionnaire. And I would tell you and submit to you that it is just as important to have a pre-call questionnaire for a seller as you do a buyer. And here's why. I don't like getting blindsided. When you walk into a listing appointment with a seller, you should have answers to questions that you ask. This should not be wholly, I mean, you will ask some additional questions, but this should wholly be reviewing the questions that you asked already in the pre-call questionnaire. Why? So you're not caught off guard. You know where the pain points are for the seller. You know where their hot buttons are. And you can tailor your listing presentation around what they told you in the pre-call questionnaire that you have. You only need about 15 or 20 minutes to do this. And I would highly recommend you do. I will be sending this out to you afterwards. But some of the, you're going to get their basic information. I always like asking them to describe their home for me so I have a very clear understanding about what they feel it is. And then I usually ask them, on a scale of 1 to 10, if I were to come into your home today, what level would I tell you that your home is in from a condition standpoint? And by the way, Mr. Seller, 1 is a shack, and 10 is the Taj Mahal. Where do you think your house falls? At least that gives me an opportunity so that I'm not blindsided if I'm going in for a listing presentation and I have to make some conditional adjustments on the fly. Now, could there be some surprises once I get in? Of course, but they should be minor course corrections, not a major course correction, if that makes sense. So I don't ask them to rate it for themselves. I ask them to do it in my position. What would I think? What this does is it takes them out of their mind and gets them to focus on more objective line of thinking, which is really important because we all know that most sellers have a higher inflated view of the condition of their house than most real estate agents do. Occasionally we're a little surprised in a good way, but usually a seller who rates their house as a 10, maybe a real estate agent would rate it as an 8. At least that's been my experience. So that's really important. I always ask, what improvements have you made? What updates have you made since you were in there? Then I ask, of course, your motivation questions. Where are you moving? Why are you moving? How soon are you moving? Why is this important to you? What happens if you don't get to where it is they say they're moving, San Diego, by September 30th? Because that allows you to keep going back to them, and if you need to revisit motivation, if they're getting stuck on where they're going and not listening to you, then you can kind of go back and, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, you told me that it was really important to you to get to San Diego by September 30th so you could be there when your daughter gives birth to your first grandchild. I really think we need to make a price adjustment now in order to meet those goals. Has anything changed? So not to take this the wrong way, but use their words to help them self-discover or re-self-discover the motivation that they shared with you. And again, that should be in the pre-call questionnaire. A few other questions is, who's on title? Will all the decision makers be there for our appointment? If not, Why not? Do you need them to be there? Do you want them to be there? Do you need to reschedule this to a time when everyone can be there? Another that I love asking is, what do you feel the fair market value of your home is? Most of the time, you'll get some sort of an answer. Every once in a while, you'll get someone who tries to be a little evasive, and they don't want to taint your opinion. And I always tell them, I say, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, what you think your home is worth has absolutely nothing to do with the value that the market is going to tell me it's worth. We may be in sync, we may not be in sync, but the benefit to you telling me this is so I can have proper expectations when we sit down to talk about value, and we go through all the statistics and information showing where the market is telling us the value is. Now, here's the one thing, and the first tidbit, little nugget, is never, ever, 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 ever marry your price. What do I mean by that? Do not, under any circumstances, tell your seller, well, this is my price that I think your home is worth. That is never a good idea, because what happens if you didn't get the right price to begin with? Now it's your fault. Conversely, I would submit to you to consider the following. The market is showing us that your house is currently valued around X. And I usually give them a very narrow price range, not a specific number, because we know nobody is that good. But give them a narrow range and tell them a little bit about the benefits and pros and cons of choosing a higher point in the range or a lower point in the range. So, and then this also comes down to price point. For example, I know that a lot of sellers and some agents will talk about the pricing. How do you price a property game? Is it better to price it at $400 or is it better to price it at $399.9? And I would argue it all comes down to visibility. You can't buy a house that you can't see. So my thought process has always been, if they're around a major price break, 400, a semi-major price break of 350 in this example, or 450, that you need to hit it right on the money. And here's why. It has to do with search. So if buyers are searching, whether it's through MyBor, whether it's through Zillow, whether it's through Redfin, you name the search portal that they're using, but most of them have brackets for pricing, drop-down boxes for ranges. And so if you are priced at 400 and you have a buyer who's looking from 3 to 400, you're going to come up in the search. If you have a buyer who's looking from 350 to 450, you're going to come up in the search. If you have a buyer who's looking from 4 to 500, you're going to come up in the search. But if you're priced at $399.9, you are going to be completely invisible to anyone looking from 4 to 500,000. So I like visibility. $399 is it psychological? Absolutely it is. That's best for pens and pencils and gum and all the rest. But when it comes to a $500,000 house or $400,000 house or whatever, that doesn't hold as much weight, at least in my experience. So I'm trying to get my listings in front of as many people as possible, and pricing it at a major price break I've found does that. And when you explain that to your sellers, that is a major win for them and shows them that you're the expert. So that's it. I always like to know where their price point. If they are way off on price, at least I know I need to have that conversation, and I need to make sure that I bring tons of resources with me, comparable data. Maybe you have some stats that you've pulled. Maybe you have some charts, some spreadsheets on price points and selling versus not selling, list to sale price percentages, whatever that you can show your client to hopefully help them self-discover this. I always come in with more information that I need in order to make sure that I'm hitting my client. Then I always ask them, are you interviewing any other agents? I think this is really important, and I will be very vulnerable here. I hated asking that question because I thought, for me, am I introducing an issue that doesn't exist? In other words, if I'm the only one that they're interviewing, am I introducing to them the concept of, well, should I be interviewing more than one? And it took me a while to get around that. And so if they are thinking of interviewing, I want to know how many, when the appointments are, if they'll tell me, and who the other agents are, if they'll tell me. Sometimes they won't, and that's fine. I don't push it. but I usually ask them, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, I certainly appreciate that. You need to do, all the research you need in order to feel comfortable with the agent that you hire for the job of getting your house sold. I'm just curious. I know most of the agents around the area. We all work together. We're all colleagues. Would you mind sharing with me who that other agent is? And I would say 7 times out of 10, they'll give me the name. And if I know the agent, I'll know a lot of times how they work. And I can make sure that if there's any gaps in the way that they work, maybe I can address those. Obviously, I never, ever talk about another agent. I never talk bad about another agent, but I always try to make myself better, and I talk myself up, and I address any gaps that I see. Always keep it positive. Never, ever talk negative about another agent. That is an ethics violation. I do not want to see you in front of me on professional standards. So do not ever talk negatively about another agent. It's always positive. If you have nothing good to say about that other agent, you just say, "Oh, I've heard about them, and I'm looking forward to having a great conversation with you." You can just leave it at that. So that's that. Then I also ask, what are they looking to net from the sale? And that'll give you a good idea of if they're being realistic or not. And then the last thing is, I always ask, what are the 3 most important things you're looking for in a real estate agent? And I would tell you, if they've had experience with agents in the past, the number 1 answer that I get is communication. Because that is the number 1 complaint against real estate agents for consumers according to NAR. And that has been top of the list for years. So I always include in my presentations my communication systems so that they know just how consistent I am on communicating with them and what they can expect. And then, of course, if whatever they tell me that they're looking for, or challenges that they've had in the past, ask them, I'm curious, have you worked with an agent before? Great. What was your experience? And they'll tell you. They'll tell you the good, the bad, the ugly, and anything that they give you that is not a positive, that is your opportunity to address that in your listing presentation when you're in front of them, and make sure that you're hitting those, because they're basically telling you how to sell to them. And that is a really easy way to make sure that you are getting a leg up on any competition that you may have. So that's that, and I set the appointment. I used to do a 2-step listing appointment. Obviously today you can't really do that. I highly recommend, if you don't do this, I think most agents do, a 1-step listing presentation. Have your listing presentation ready to go to show them. Have your contract ready to go to sign off on all the forms when you attend that listing appointment. Even if they say that there's another agent after you, always assume that you have the business. And that would be the main thing that I would highly encourage you to do. So make sure that you understand all of this stuff. So as you see on the slide that's up now, get all the information you need. You want to make sure that you have their correct address, their email address, their cell phone numbers for everyone who is an owner of the property. And then understand what their motivation is, so you can use that and circle back throughout the transaction. And then make sure that you utilize that along with the seller's timing. And then the expectations we talked about on pricing is really important. You need to hit that hard, and hopefully they're aligned with you. And if not, you're going to have some extra work to do, and you know where to focus your time on that presentation. And if there are any concerns or objections that they give you, these are opportunities. They're telling you what they want to hear in order to hire you to list their house. So make sure you come prepared with their objections, which is why you want to ferret it out at the beginning, so you don't have to address it on the fly, and you can prepare for it and make sure that you hit those when you're on your formal listing appointment with them. Rick, anything that you have to add?
Well, I can see why you closed over 90% of your listing appointments, because you were completely prepared. You knew exactly what you were doing, and you practiced it, and you had a script, and you knew what you were, which is what you need to do. So you're teaching people exactly what needs to happen. One of the things I always never liked about sales training is they would tell you how to do it, but it wasn't how they did it. Mm-hmm. Especially your management. They would come in, and you knew them because you sold with them and you saw what they did, and then they came and they told you totally different, because that's not the way they think they're supposed to tell you. You're just telling them that here's how I did it, here's how it works. So that's the number one. And number two, you're not only setting them up so that you get the listing, but you're setting it up so that when they have an offer, if there's an issue, you can help them remember why they're making this move and how important it is, so that maybe that $300 item isn't that big a deal. It's more important that you go ahead and accept it and let's move on, right?
Absolutely.
And I think 100%. That's huge deal. I've been through tons of sales training, and it's exactly how it should be done. I agree.
It is. We've all heard probably the statement that real estate agents need to be psychiatrists and psychologists before they can start their job as a real estate agent.
Yeah.
And if you haven't heard that, you will, because it's 100% true. Here's why. We know that consumers make decisions, major buying decisions, based on emotion, especially buyers. And so what I use in my buyer training, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, we know that buyers buy in emotion and then they justify with logic. Sellers can list with emotion and justify with logic. You've got to get through the emotion. Most sellers feel that their house is better than it really is and is worth more than it really is. That's natural. I feel that way about my own house. So my job as a listing agent is first to be a psychiatrist, to break from the psychological tie to that house, because this is a business transaction and we need to treat it as such and take the emotion out. So you got to get through that first before we can get to all the rest of the stuff that comes after that. And that's when we get into our listing consultation. So let's assume that we've gotten through the pre-call questionnaire and you have set the appointment. And so now you're actually going to the seller. So I'm going to be sharing some very minor things. They're small things that might seem inconsequential to you, but I will tell you, when you add all these up, it makes a huge impact on setting yourself apart from any competition that you have, number one. Number two, it sets you up as the professional that you are. And here's where we start. So I always set expectations when I finish a conversation with a client, and I never finish a conversation with a client without a what's next statement. Here's what I mean by that. Rick, if I were come to your house to list it and we just got through the pre-call questionnaire, after thanking you and setting the appointment, I'm like, Rick, thanks so much for spending so much of your valuable time with me, giving me an insight as to why you're choosing to move and why you're looking at hiring an agent for the job of selling your house. Here's what happens next. When I show up to your appointment, I'm going to be going through my listing presentation. We're going to be going through your house together quickly. This will be no more than 15 minutes. I will be taking my notes and so forth in order to make sure that I have a clear idea of the product that you're asking me to sell for you. And by the way, let me clarify that real quickly. We don't sell anything as agents, we market. So I am, and as a buyer, as a buyer's agent, you're not selling the buyer anything. The buyer's going to buy. You're helping them through the process. As a listing agent, you're the marketing expert. But you don't generally directly interact with the person who's buying your house unless it's at an open house or a buyer calls you directly to do a showing or whatever. But your primary job is marketing. That's what we do. So when you arrive at that house to market it and you set that expectation, Rick, this is what's going to happen next, and then you tell them whatever it is that you're going to happen, and then you make sure you follow that when you're there. So I would always start pre-selling, if you will, what I was going to do when we were next together. And they always knew what to expect and how it was going to go. Why? Because I wanted to control how the appointment was going to go. And there's little things here that we're going to talk about. If you're familiar with neuro-linguistic programming, I'm big on that. I'm not an expert, but I use a lot of neuro-linguistic programming, which is embedding commands within statements in order to help the consumer self-discover where you are wanting them to go if you're trying to take them down a certain route. But basically, it all starts with, and this is really important, overlooked a lot of times, and real estate agents have a really bad reputation about this, you have to show up on time. Do not show up late for a job interview. And we all know that's exactly what a listing appointment is a job interview. If you show up late, you are just telling the seller you do not value their time. And that is rude. And it is unprofessional. So always show up on time. Every single time. Show up early. As they say in the military, being early is on time, being on time is late, and being late is dead. If you have a military background, you will recognize that. They all say it. So always show up on time. And then I always show up when they answer the door. Mr. and Mrs. Seller, my name is Steve Rupp. We have a 2 o'clock appointment. It is 2 o'clock. Are we ready to get started? Yes, you are setting the tone. And you are recognizing and reaffirming that you value their time by doing that. The other thing is, as Malcolm Gladwell wrote in his book Blink, first impressions are crucial. And it doesn't just happen in the first 3 seconds that we were taught several years ago. It happens in a fraction of a second. So when I show up, I am always in a suit. Am I saying that you have to wear a suit every? No, I'm not. That was my thing. I would encourage you to consider the following. You are coming in for a job interview, for a white-collar job, where you have the opportunity to make a fair amount of money if you do your job well. Why not dress the part? For me, it was always a suit, a tie, with a starched white shirt. I always wore white. The reason is because it conveys trust and confidence. That's why presidential candidates or politicians always wear white. And go back and look. If you don't believe me, they always wear white shirts. So I'm not telling you exactly what to wear. I'm just telling you what I did. And I will tell you this for a fact. I had many clients tell me, thank you so much for dressing up for me. I appreciate that in an age where we have gotten so casual. I appreciate that you took the time to prepare for our appointment. And I am not kidding you when I say that. It is that important. If you are showing up and if you want to be treated seriously as a professional, dress like it. And when you show up on that front step and you are on time or even a couple minutes early and you're in a full suit or whatever nice clothes you choose to wear, that seller is going to start taking you seriously from the very second they set eyes on you. And that is where you're setting the tone for the entire rest of the appointment. Then we walk into the house. This is all before we start the actual work, by the way. And this is really important. And Rick, don't worry, I'm going to speed through the rest of this stuff, but I always ask if they would like for me to remove my shoes. And that's a courtesy thing. The next thing that I do is I tell them where we're going to sit. So I always want to sit in the kitchen. That's where important decisions are made. And I always sit at the head of the table. If there are 2 people there, I want them on either side of me. Number one, head of the table establishes authority. And if you look at and read any negotiating book, it'll tell you that. And so try to sit at the head of the table. If it's a circular table, pick the one that's closest to the door. That's usually the one that is kind of perceived as the head of the table. And then have if it's a traditional husband and wife seller, we'll make that assumption for this example. You want them on either side because as you're showing them your listing presentation, it's a lot easier for you to do that. If they're on either side of you, you can have your listing presentation in the middle so you can still read it, whether it's on a computer, a tablet, or written down. So that's that. The other thing that I always do is if there is a TV on, I always ask them to turn the TV off. And I can't tell you how many times their sellers have had the TV on with the volume on as they tried to do that during our presentation. First of all, it's rude, it's inconsiderate, but secondly, I want to make sure I have their undivided attention. So the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to ask them to do something for me right away. And it's a very simple task, but it starts to get them to follow directions, which is what you want as a listing agent. You want your clients to follow directions. That's why they're hiring you. If they knew what to do and how to do it, and they could do it on their own, they do it themselves. But they are hiring you as a professional. Be the professional. So I always ask them, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, would you mind giving me a glass of water, please? And that's as simple as that. No one's ever said no. And then they bring the glass of water. I'm starting very small. I'm starting to get them to listen to me and follow my instructions. I know it's tiny. We sit down, usually do just some basically get to know you, and they say, before we get started on our presentation, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, would you mind if I take a quick spin through your house? There's 2 different psychologies of this, and I've heard very good sales trainers say both ways. One says, do not let the seller show you around the house because it's going to take too long. The other is let them show you around the house, because that's where you're going to build rapport with them. I'm a relationship guy. I like building rapport. That's where I build the majority of my rapport with my clients at the very beginning before I get into my presentation. And so that's when I'm going to start asking them questions as we're going through their house. It is not just the parroting, hey, this is a great room, that kind of thing. So that's that. We've gone through the house. We've come down with our list of what needs work, suggestions, whatever. The other thing that I will do when I'm sitting down with them is I will say, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, do I have your permission to be 100% bluntly honest with you throughout our interaction together? You see, I only believe in being 100% honest and trusted with my clients. Is that okay with you? And of course, well, yeah, absolutely. What have they just done? They've just given you permission to tell them anything. And there's going to be some things that you're going to tell them that they don't want to hear. But you know what? Those are probably the things that they most need to hear. And so they've given you permission to tell them that. The other thing that I absolutely love is I do the permission to reject script. And simply put, that is, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, by the time that we're finished with our time today and we get to know each other, we are going to need to make a decision. And that decision is whether we choose to work together or not. And you are interviewing me as much as I'm interviewing you today. And you're interviewing me for the job of being your agent that you hire for the job of selling your house. I'm interviewing you to see if you're a good fit for my consulting business. And at the end of our time together, we're going to decide together if we feel we're a good fit. Is that fair? Of course, they all say, well, yeah. Well, what are you doing? You are telling them that you are judging them just as much as they're judging you. That's really important. You are leveling the playing field. Instead of them having all the power and saying, we're the seller, we're going to be making a hiring decision, you are saying, I'm making a decision too, and I'm going to tell you if I feel like you're a good fit, and I am telling you that you might not be a good fit for my business, and that's okay. And so you're giving them permission to reject. You are also having them give you permission to reject them. That is powerful. That was a game changer when I started doing that. The last thing that I do when we talk about this as when we get started is the 5 options. People like options. And so I tell them, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, as we make a decision as to whether or not we're working together today, as I see it right now, you have 5 options. Some of them might not be very palatable to you right now. However, they're options nonetheless. You can choose to stay in your home and do absolutely nothing today. No one is forcing you most of the time to do anything to sell your house. Number 2, you can choose to do it on your own. Number 3, you can choose to hire a limited services company. Number 4, you can choose to hire a traditional salesperson. Or number 5, you can choose to hire me for the job of selling your house as a real estate consultant. So if you picked that up, if you saw that was neurolinguistic programming, hire me. That was an embedded command. If you're familiar with neurolinguistic programming, hopefully you picked that up. I am telling them what to do. Hire me for the job of selling their house or getting your house sold. Those are powerful commands that are embedded that you want to start peppering throughout your presentation. So we've gotten through that. We want to make sure that we talk about your goals and expectations. We're getting into point number 1 in this slide. This should all go back to your pre-call questionnaire. You should have the answers to these questions right off the bat. Here's what you're going to do. You're going to use your pre-call questionnaire to summarize what they told you on the phone during that pre-call questionnaire. Why? You want them to hear you that you listened to them and took notes as to what was important to them. That is huge. And then you're going to parrot that back to them. And that does 2 things. Number 1, they heard that you listened to them and cared enough to take notes. Number 2, you are reintroducing to them what they said was important to them, and they're hearing it a second time. Again, if they have issues with what they're what their motivation is, and they start vacillating, you're going to keep going back, and that's anchoring the conversation. So that's really, really, really important. We're going to get through the listing presentation at this point. I will send this to you. Some of the stuff we've talked about, I've already mentioned. But for us, I have my mission statement in it, my vision statement. I have our values for our team, and this is for me, our values for our team was that we had grit. Let me see where I am on here. Family, knowledge, integrity, and grit. And so the guiding principles by how we work was guide, lead, and protect. And you're going to see this when I send this the listing presentation to you, is that's peppered throughout. And I always mention this to our clients and say, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, our job is to guide, lead, and protect you through this process from beginning to end. We're going to be with you every step of the way. And this is a partnership. This is, yes, you're hiring me, but you're the owner of the house. And there's some things that I legally just cannot do that you have to do. So we need to make sure that this is a partnership. So that's really, really important. The other thing is that I start putting seeds in for referrals right away. I would encourage you to come up with language that encourages them to start thinking about referrals, and that's how you do your business. So what I would do, the script that I use is the following. Mr. and Mrs. Seller, my intention is that you have such a magical level experience with me that you feel compelled, not just committed, to introduce me to 2 people by the time that we get to a celebration, what you would call closing. Does that seem fair? And I've never had anybody say no. What are you doing? You're planting the referral seed and you don't even have the listing yet. But it's a beautiful thing. And you say, do I have your permission that throughout this process, as we help you and get your house sold, again, you're future pacing them for an outcome that you want to happen, do I have your permission to check in with you to see if anyone comes to mind for people that we could help and provide the same high level of service that you are receiving? Yeah, that's fine, Steve. Is there anyone that comes to mind right now? Well, no, not really. Okay, great. Well, thanks for thinking about that. I'll check in on you from time to time. So this is a great opportunity for you during major milestones to check in with your clients. Mr. and Mrs. Seller, we just got news back from the lender that the appraisal just came in and the value meets the contract sales price. Isn't that great news? And then you can go into your referral scripts. So that's a great opportunity. We talk about our team. I'm very clear about who does what so that they're not confused. So if you are on a team, make sure that you're very clear. I always had pictures and a job description, and I always told my clients, but don't worry, any one of us can help you, and if they're not the expert for your particular question, we'll make sure we get you to the right person. So call whichever one you get first. You can call me. I'm your main point of contact, but if I'm not available, Kylie is here and she will be happy to help you and take care of you. So I always do that, make sure that they're familiar with our team. And then I use some stats. I tell a little bit about us, how we work. We're buy referral only. We've been around for 51 years, blah, blah, blah. We talk about our promise to them. All this is in my listing presentation that you're getting, so I'm not going to read all of it for the sake of time. We talk about agency, and I think that's really, really, really important. I talk about what seller agency is, buyer agency, or limited or disclosed dual agency is. And that's really important to go over that from the very beginning. And then I talk about current market conditions. We talk about this on our slide, is that you've got to know your numbers. Make sure that you share the overall market conditions with your client. Make sure that you know what the average days on market is. Make sure you know what the average list price to sale price ratio is, especially in their price point. Make sure you know how many listings are on the market, how many are pending, how many have sold. Is it trending up? Is it trending down? Set expectations with your client. Make sure that they know that you are familiar with the market. They can go on Zillow or whatever place they want and find all the listings, all the pendings, all the sales. That is not private to real estate agents anymore. We are not the keepers of the data. We're the interpreters of the data. Give them data, interpret it, and circle it back to them so that they know how that data is impacting their particular situation. That is super, super key. And then I go through, I always talk about the process of selling a house. And I go through I have 10 steps. I really watered it down. And we talk to them about the importance of going through that. And then we talk about the most offices have handbooks that you give out to buyers, talks about agency and so forth. And then we talk about our marketing plan. I actually have, and I'll include this as well, our concierge services. This is something that I teach in my programs, and this goes through how we can help them get their house ready for sale. I am a massive proponent of pre-listing inspections, and this is something that I go through with my client. Only if the house is, if it's only been maybe 2 or 3 years since they last bought it and they had an inspection, or if they just last had it inspected, or whatever, I won't push it. But aside from that, I will always push a pre-listing inspection. We don't have time to get into the entire psychology about this, but suffice it to say, I like to get the skeletons out of the closet. I like to make sure that my clients are working on an efficient timeline when they are actually under contract, and they don't have to rush around. Why? Because it's not going to create a great experience for them. You want them to go through this as quickly and easily as possible so that they can get on to whatever it is that they told you is most important to them. What is their goal? So the marketing plan. I actually have a marketing plan that I go through with my sellers, and I actually have it written out, and it's 2 pages. I will share this with you. And I have my clients initial each of the items on there and sign it, and then I sign it as well. Why do I do this? I want my clients to know that what I am promising to deliver to them, I am committing to in writing. This is really powerful. I don't know of another agent that does this. Maybe they do, and I don't know about them, but I think it's important that you put out in writing and have clients know this, and you go over it, and it's something they can see and keep because they sign it, so they get a copy of it, and they can see just how much you're doing for them. You are starting to provide the value or enhance the value to them, and that's really, really, really important. So marketing plan is really important. The last thing is commissions, buyer's agency commission. So I'm just going to preface this. No seller is obligated to offer a buyer's agency compensation right now. We know that. They never have been. So if they don't want to, they don't want to. But I would highly recommend that if they are choosing not to offer compensation, that they could very well be shooting themselves in the foot. And as an agent, you probably know this for a lot of reasons. And if they say, well, Rick, or Rick says to me, Steve, I don't want to pay a buyer's agent's commission. I understand I don't have to now. Well, you never had to, but I don't have to now. So that's going to save me a lot of money, isn't it? And here's my answer to that. Well, Rick, but the bottom line is buyers have always paid the commission. Why? Because they're the ones that are bringing the money to the transaction. All of it. Without the buyer, you wouldn't sell your house. You have equity. You can't get any of that out of it unless someone's willing to bring you money for it. So technically, they've always paid for it. Here's the other thing. I would also argue the following. Do you think, as a seller, if you charged a fee to come in to see your house, would there be people who would come in to see it? Would there be a lot of people? Rick, what do you think? Would there be a lot of people that would come in to see your house if you charged them admission to come see it?
Not unless it was an absolutely special home. Otherwise, there would be very few to none.
That's right. So, and that's basically what you're doing. If you don't offer buyer's agent's commission, you are asking the buyer to pay to see your house. That is exactly what you're doing, Mr. Seller. What if you said, Rick, how about if we don't offer, we don't charge them to get in the house, and it's free to get in. Rick, do you think under that situation you get a few more buyers in to see it?
Get more people in if it doesn't cost anything to get in.
Absolutely you would. Now, Rick, here's the magic. What do you think would happen if you offered a reward, or you offered to pay people to come and see your house? Do you think you get a lot of people in then?
I think of like an amusement park. If you start paying people to come to your amusement park, you'll have more people come, right?
Absolutely you will. And here's the beautiful part about it. You only have to pay the one person. You can offer to pay everybody, but you only have to pay the one person who actually agrees to your terms and conditions and brings you the money to buy your house.
Right.
You know what? Rick, congratulations, nothing's changed.
That's right.
Can you see why buyers or sellers would want to offer compensation to a buyer's agent to bring a buyer to see their house.
Yeah, I
Some
don't
people
see
will
why
say
they wouldn't.
no. Right. Some people might say, no, I don't want to, and that's fine. If that's where it is, you may need to make a decision as to whether or not this is something for them, if you want to work with them or not. So we'll move on to the next slide real quickly. I know you got a couple things you wanted to go over, Rick, but in a nutshell, that's the listing presentation that I use. We've talked about some tips and tricks. I front-loaded that earlier, so let's move on in the sake of time. We talked about the compensation for the buyer's agent's commission, the potential impact on the sale of the home. You know as well as I do, agents, that if buyers have to pay their buyer's agent a commission, some of them just will not be able to afford the home, period. Rick, is your slide next?
Yes.
Why don't you talk real quickly about this very concept?
Yeah. Well, really, just very quickly, wanted to talk about two different. You, as Steve has talked, you have to have a plan, and you have to. The more you can explain to a seller, show a seller what the value you're adding, the more chance you have of being the listing agent. And there's a couple items, there may be more, but there's a couple items that we have found that come up. One is you get a low ball offer. And we think it's extremely important that you're prepared at the listing appointment to show the seller that you have a plan for something like this. And this real basic is you have the black area, you have your purchase price. You can see a low ball offer at $750 instead of $800. Not a huge low ball offer, but still. And the idea behind this one is that the low ball offer could be because they can't afford that price. When we qualify somebody, we qualify them to a payment, and then we turn that payment into a price. So if they go and they can afford a $750,000 home, they can't afford an $800,000 home, but that's what they like. I mean, can you imagine somebody liking an $800,000 home more than a $750,000? So that's what they like. How do you handle that? And as you can see, you have to keep that qualification, you have to protect the monthly payment. And you can see how we were able to do that. And you have to protect the cash to close. And just showing the seller that here's our plan and here's how we do it. I would go through this a little more, but right now we don't have a ton of time, but that's what it's showing. If you want more detail on it, I can certainly do that. The next one is if you get, and I'm sure nobody's had this, but if you get an appraisal gap, so the appraisal comes in lower, and now what do? Right? Do you just sell it for the $700 instead of $750 that you originally sold it for, or is there something else you can do? One of the ways, and I'm not saying everybody would do this, but it's a good presentation to the listing, to the customer when you're looking at listing, that you have a plan. My suggestion is that at the end you say, now when you have, like Steve said, who else is coming? They have other agents coming. Say, well, make sure you ask them, and I'd even write it down. Say, ask them these questions. What's your plan if the appraisal comes in short? What's your plan if I get a low ball offer? Most agents won't have a plan. It'll set you apart. This one, appraisal gap, you can see, basically this says $700, but that's because the program won't let me put $750. This is still a $750 purchase price. So what you can see is I protected the total cash to close. And if they go to keep with their lender, they have to bring another $50,000. But in mine, I'm able to protect what they had to bring to closing, and I'm able to protect the payment. So I was able to do all that. What did it cost the seller? Instead of $50,000, it cost them $18,000. Now we can maneuver that some, but that's what I did in this example. So instead of selling the house for $50,000 less, they could sell it and provide $18,000 worth of seller contribution to make it all work. Just another option. That's what this is for, so that you just want to present it so that people can see that you have a plan for the things that could happen. Any comments, Steve?
This is huge. This is a massive value add that you can provide for your clients as their expert. You're not the finance expert, but you know someone who is, and you can show them that by thinking outside of the box a little bit, you can provide a solution to a problem that they didn't think was going to be solvable. And this is where the real value of a veteran, experienced real estate agent and a lender partner in this example really comes into play. If I know we went over this very quickly, and I know Rick would be happy to go over this in more detail. I found a lot of real estate agents are not numbers people, and so if you want him to go through this with you, item by item, line by line, explain exactly how this works, so you can explain the concept to your clients, I'm sure he would be happy to do that. I would encourage you that you should at least know about this, because I would guarantee you some of your competition, your other agents do, and they're telling their clients about it. So I would encourage you to at least know about it, so you are not on the outside looking in.
Yeah,
and
I hate it
losing
when that
business.
happens to me.
Keep deals together. This
Yeah.
is a great opportunity to do that.
Yeah. And I would be happy to help anybody with that. Let's get to the next slide.
So as we go through as we sum up here, it's 2:00, so I want to make sure that we keep this to our hour. Hopefully what you've took out of this was you understand, hopefully a little bit more clear on buyer agency rules. If you have any questions, issues, if you want to take issue with what I said, call me, email me, text me, I don't care. I'd be happy to have a conversation with you, but I hope this provides some clarity, at least the stuff that I'm hearing from my coaching clients. A lot of people are having a lot of misunderstanding about what this means and how they can work within it. I hope that I've been able to provide some clarity on how you prepare for listing presentations. This is not something you should just be going to wing. This is something where you should be going to prepare as the expert of the market for that seller, that you need to be able to provide that information, and then have a formal listing presentation. This listing presentation that I'm going to be sending you out by tomorrow is something that I took from 5 other agents in our office plus what I had, and I put the best of everything together into one. And so if you want to do that and just Frankenstein it, put together one that works for you, that's awesome. Buyers agents commissions, we talked about that. We talked about some scripting with that, which is really important. And then sample financing sheets. Rick is happy to provide you with some sample financing sheets for your seller as part of the listing. I love using those as buyers come in to see the house. If they don't think they can afford it, if they think that they're going to have an issue with down payment, whatever, Rick can provide that and show that they can afford it in so many cases, and that there is more than one way to afford this house.
Yeah, a lot of misunderstanding in that.
Absolutely. So, Rick, thank you for being a great host. And we certainly hope that you enjoyed this. We hope you took a lot out of it. Like I said, Property Pro Series, we're going to be having this every month. Our next webinar is going to be on August the 28th at 1 p.m. And we're going to be talking about secrets on how to turn your database into a data bank. And I will be showing you exactly how I did that to generate the majority of my business from my database instead of calling, prospecting, all that good stuff. Not to say you shouldn't do that, but this is a way for you to establish a robust business without having to cold call if that's truly not what you want to do. Also, I wanted to make sure that you knew, I think you all know I'm a coach, so if you're interested in pursuing that, if you wanted to have a conversation, I would love to sit down and talk with you, whether it's over the phone or whatever, talk about what coaching looks like. It's not right for everybody, but it might be right for you, and I'd love to sit down and talk with you about that. The last thing is Premier Connect is a program that I wrote. It's putting $250,000 in agents' pockets every single year by going through this program. I did it for 3 years. It works, and it's leveraging your vendor relationships, and I show you exactly how to do it and exactly what I did. If you're interested in that, connect with me afterwards, and I'd be happy to share some more information to see if that's right for you. And then lastly, talk to Rick. As you can see, he knows what he's doing. He thinks outside of the box. And even if he is a backup lender, if you're committed to your lender, we all love loyalty. But if Rick is someone that you could see yourself working with, or maybe you just want to give him an opportunity, he would love that, I'm sure. Rick, right? I'm sure he would love to sit down and have a conversation with you to show how he might be able to help you.
Yeah, because that's really the key, right? Is how can you help and make it easier on everybody? And I know everybody has relationships, so you just, if you could just be a part of it, that works. Help somebody out where they can't, have an issue.
Absolutely. So we want to be a resource for you. We want to be your Property Pro team. If you have any questions, issues, concerns, anything about the content of this webinar, please reach out to us. We are happy to help, have a conversation, and we would love to welcome you back next month for our secrets on how to turn your database into a data bank. You don't want to miss that. Bring a friend, tell your office about it, tell your other colleagues about it, as we would like to spread the news and make sure that everybody hears about this and educate people to make sure that you have the most successful real estate career that you can possibly have and be the best version of yourself, not only for you, but also for your clients.
Yeah. Thanks, Steve. I appreciate it. Thanks for joining us, everyone. We do appreciate it, and please get a hold of Steve or I.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Rick. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.